pop. They got a pretty little baby that I'm gonna get me one. Said I'll be standing on the corner.
All right, everyone. Welcome to the Tonto's Demise. Let me get my crap together here. All right, now we're ready. Welcome to the Tonto's Demise week. What week is it? 6. Week 6 already. Recap. Another good week in the books. Not a whole lot of bad things went on this week. Couple people had some minor injury problems, I think. But nothing's too serious that is going to have long-term implications for the rest of the season and those teams and the league here. Hopefully Dak was like, that was it. That was like the grand finale, hopefully. And the fantasy guys were like, that's enough. We've taken enough. We need to start giving back. So we'll see what happens here. Anything else really interesting to talk about? I don't think so. We had some trade action going on already earlier today. I'm sure they'll get into that on the podcast. Patrick Mahomes getting passed around like a cheap piece of trash as soon as he leaves the Isotopes. He'll be playing for his third team in 3 weeks this week. Very disappointing to see that happening, but what can you do? I don't think there is anything else. You know what? They never, I guess I should address real quickly to anyone who is wondering about the cat allergy thing. Again, it's always been a minor thing. Like, it's not a huge problem, like a mild cat allergy that I've always had. And I'm pretty sure I did have it when I was a kid. And I know you definitely was talking about how they had cats when I stayed over at their place whenever I was a kid. And I'm pretty sure that, knowing myself, I most likely, if I was irritated by the allergies or they acted up or anything with the cats, most likely I just kept quiet and didn't want to inconvenience anyone and just never said anything, which is the most likely reason that you never really knew about it. I know it, like, I would just get, my eyes would get itchy and like a stuffy nose a little bit, but so nothing ever that was ever more than like a minor inconvenience to me. And so that's just how I am. I won't say just to not be an inconvenience. I'll just bear it, deal with it, and so that's the most likely explanation as to why maybe some of you never really knew about the cat thing until I actually talked about it and said, "Oh, by the way, this is like." So, especially I think when I was when I was a lot younger too, especially like 10, 11, 12 years old, whatever. Most likely, just you guys don't care, really, why I'm talking about this. But the point is, if I'm minorly inconvenienced, I'm just gonna suck it up and gut it out and probably not say anything, just for the sake of, I don't like drawing attention to myself. I don't like being an inconvenience to others. So most likely I just dealt with it and never said anything. So anyway, if you're wondering about developing a cat allergy later in life or anything, like, it's never been really much more to me. It's no danger to anything, so I've never really taken it very seriously. But no more talking about that. Let's get into the Week 6 matchups, shall we? As always, we start with the defending champion. From Gags to Riches, he changed his team name. The Meth Head Beachcombers, temporarily. It's already back to Gags to Riches. A little reference to some conversation going on the line app there that I ignored for a pretty good while. Got my unread messages up to a couple hundred there at one point. So whatever that was all about. I kind of skimmed through it. But anyway, you all know what it is, and it doesn't matter. I don't need to keep going on about it anyway. So, all right, the matchup: Gags to Riches versus Shawshank Athletics this week. And Gags to Riches, he gets the victory. He moves up to 5-1. The only team to go over 200 points this week, 236.15 to Shawshank's 149.85. Gags to Riches. The Riches keep getting richer as he got Julio Jones back, and he got Ronald Jones this week in his lineup. Deshaun Watson, his quarterback, he goes for 66.5. Cooper Kupp only 4. Tyreek only 5.5. But Julio goes for 33.5. Running backs, Montgomery, and again, Ronald Jones, 13.7 for Montgomery. Jones, just over 29. Kelsey, 21.5. Beasley in the flex there this week, 14.5 points for him, including a touchdown. So good plug and play there. Not sure if you had some bye week issues or what was going on here. That you were starting Beasley. I think it looks like you got McKinnon, but Mostert was back. But Mostert's back. Mostert was back, but he is out again. So it looks like McKinnon might have some more value here going forward. Tucker, your kicker. Oh, he had a bunch of field goals. He got you about 17 points. And then the Arizona Cardinals defense did pretty well against Andy Dalton. Yahoo says 21. The actual score must have been about 30, maybe 32, something like that. So, again, the only score that was above 200 this week, way more than enough to get past Shawshank Athletics. Let's take a look at him. He had Gardner Minshew go for 44.5. Deebo Samuel goes for 18. And now we've got a long string of single-digit scores here. T.Y. goes for 2. Chenault goes for 4. Gurley goes for 9.5. Freeman, 6.5. And Mark Andrews, 4.1. And then in the flex, A.J. Brown, I believe, acquired from Gags to Riches there. So you guys swapped Tyreek and A.J. Brown. A.J. gets the advantage this week, 22.6. But sure it doesn't matter because what's much more important is Gags got the victory here. Gostowski, only 2 points. He missed a couple kicks again this week. But then you had the bright side here was playing the Miami Dolphins defense. They shut out the Jets. Yahoo says 21, but it must have been about 34, excuse me, or 35, something like that. But said those 5, 6 single-digit scores, not going to get it done. Especially, 150, it's not great, but it's not horrible either. Some weeks, 150 points is going to get it done. This week was not one of them. Shawshank Athletics, he moves to 2-4. He is in 10th place, while at 5-1, Gags to Riches, he is in 3rd place. Let's go right down the line. We got Springfield Isotopes trying to stay undefeated versus Darkwing Jet. And the Isotopes were able to pull out the victory here. I was just saying 150 sometimes enough to get a win. Isotopes only had 157.8, but it was enough to get past Darkwing Jet, who only had 110.5, which, in case you didn't already guess, that means Justin is eliminated from the knockout pool this week. All right. The Isotopes, we had no more Mahomes, so we had Aaron Rodgers this week going for 19.5 points in that embarrassing, boring game against Tampa Bay there. I believe I went on the line, said on the lineup already, that went through real quickly and looked at Aaron Rodgers from the past 10 years or so, maybe even more than 10 years. I want to say 2008, and this was actually the lowest fantasy total in a game where he wasn't injured that he's ever had. Hard to believe. So we'll see. I'm sure there was just a blip on the radar, a bounce back game, hopefully this week against the Texans there, who just got massacred by the Tennessee Titans here. So feel pretty good about the chances of Aaron Rodgers to rebound. Receivers, Hopkins, newly acquired also, Ridley and Fuller. Hopkins, only 2 catches because Kyler Murray didn't have to do very much. I think he only completed 9 passes in that game or something like that. Only 9.3 for Hopkins. Ridley, he goes for 19. And Will Fuller keeps plugging away. Another touchdown for him. He goes for 24.5. Running backs went with Chase Edmonds and Aaron Jones this week. Had Edmonds versus Drake. That ended up being an embarrassment, at least on the side of the Isotopes, as this game was not competitive at all, and Edmonds only got 4 points. Aaron Jones, 13.1. Gronk at tight end this week, since Fant is still injured. 18.8 for Gronk this week. Philip Lindsay in the flex, he goes just over 100 yards. No catches or touchdowns, but he gets 13.1 there. Kicker Suckup goes for about 10.5. And then the New York Giants defense, a plug and play against the Washington football team. They went for 27 points, I believe. All right. Said 157 was enough to get past Darkwing Jet this week. Taking a look at him, he had Teddy Bridgewater. An embarrassing quarterback matchup in this one. Bridgewater gets 25.6. Say to handily defeat Aaron Rodgers in the head-to-head matchup there. His receivers, Odell Beckham Jr., DJ Moore, and Robert Woods. Only 4.5 for Beckham. Perhaps his illness was lingering there and didn't help that he was playing Steelers defense. DJ Moore, 14.5, and then an even 14 for Robert Woods. The aforementioned Kenyon Drake has his biggest performance of the year so far. He goes for 34.5 points, thanks to his long touchdown at the end of the game there, which didn't matter for anything in that game or fortunately, in this matchup, it didn't matter because it was already. That was the only thing that got. Unfortunately for Justin, that was the only thing that got him over 100 points this week. The play was still thinking about it, laughable. Just how they were trying to run the clock out, and Drake just ran right through the line, and there was nobody there. He just took off for a 70-yard touchdown. Said it on a third down with 2 minutes to play, maybe. Just trying to run out the clock. I can't believe the Cowboys just let him run right through there and all the way to the end zone. So that got him over 100 yards. It was a long touchdown bonus. So yeah, that really a huge bump for Darkwing Jet. Makes me curious how many fantasy matchups were decided by that play. I'm sure there were quite a few across the country and the world. Singletary, 5.5 points for him. Gesicki, your tight end, another disappointing performance as he goes for 0. Gallup, only 4.5 points. You can't feel too confident going forward after that performance by Andy Dalton. For anybody who owns a Cowboys receiver, I'm sure better days will be ahead, but it looks like Gallup, Lamb, and Cooper, even though Cooper salvaged a fantasy day with a couple catches and a touchdown in the garbagiest garbage time that he could have gotten there. We'll talk about that whenever we get to Dub C's matchup here. But Gallup, Cooper, and Lamb. Even Schultz, the tight end. I think if you're one of the owners of those guys, I wouldn't say all hope is lost with them, but I think they're going to be extremely hit or miss going forward. There's going to be weeks where one of them is going to have a huge game, and the rest will probably be mediocre. Sometimes they'll all be mediocre. Which one is going to have the big game from week to week, I don't know. But I think, my opinion, looking on having watched that game, I don't know if the airs how significant the Cardinals' defense was in that matchup, but I think Dalton's going to struggle, and so their defense is not the Cowboys' defense. We know is not very good, and I fully expect Cooper, Lamb, Gallup. They'll have a couple big games, but I think for the most part they're going to be, like I said again, extremely hit or miss, boom or bust, and more bust than boom. I'm going to guess, but you never know. We'll see what happens. They're going to be playing catch up a lot for the rest of the year. So the garbage time is always good for salvaging your fantasy day. We don't care where the points come from as long as the points come. So, all right, enough about the Cowboys real quick there, because we're going to get back to them whenever we get to, again, the Dub C Yins or Jags matchup. Mason Crosby, your kicker, it goes for about 4.5. And then the Rams defense, I think Yahoo, were they correct on their? I think, yeah. Unfortunately for, I almost said FC Bahuric, for Darkwing Jet, the Rams defense only got you 3 points. So yeah, thanks to that Drake touchdown, one got you over the 100-point barrier. Just a rough week for Darkwing Jet in general, but he can't feel too bad. He's 3-3. He is still in the playoff hunt. If the season ended today, he would be in the playoffs. He's in 6th place. So he's just kind of holding on. If you can float around the 500 mark, based on how the standings are playing out so far this year, as it usually do, another week or two, you get Christian McCaffrey back. I would think that being 500, around 500, best case scenario you can imagine for getting by without the number 1 draft pick here. So even with the loss, Darkwing Jet can't feel too bad. Keep plugging away and looking forward to whenever CMC will be back here real soon. Again, the Isotopes, they stay undefeated at 6-0, and they are in 1st place. The closest matchup we had was, surprisingly, Ed Logger versus Saquon It Ain't So. And Ed Logger gets the victory here. I'm not sure what are the words to describe this matchup. Dismal? Embarrassing? As Ed Logger gets the victory, and that's all that matters, 120.2 to Saquon It Ain't So, only 117.15. So Gags scored pretty much by himself what you guys scored combined in this matchup this week. Ed Logger, he gets Lamar Jackson to go for 49 points. I wonder if that was his best score of the year so far. No, but just barely second there. He had a streak of 30-point games after week 1 where he had 50, and he goes for 49 here. Your wide receivers this week, Hollywood Brown, 9.5. Mike Evans, only 2. And Harry from the Patriots, 0 from him. I'm guessing you had some bye week issues there. Michael Thomas and Traquan Smith, neither one of them available this week. No Ruggs, no Kelly from the Chargers there. So a lot of bye week issues for Ed Logger, but he was still able to squeak out a victory. Kareem Hunt goes for 7.5. David Johnson, just under 14. Austin Hooper goes for 10. A little bit over 10. Jamal Williams, 3.5 in the flex there. And probably the deciding factor, again, in Ed Logger's matchup, I think it was the same thing last week. Brandon McManus, he kicks 6 field goals this week. He gets you about 23 points and swings this one in your favor. Said only a 3-point margin of victory here. The Green Bay Packers defense, you got to start them this week because, you had Houston going up against Tennessee there. But Green Bay, they actually, I believe the score is correct, 0. So, yeah, a lot of 2 zeros, and you still got a victory. So Ed Logger, the fantasy gods were shining down on you and gracious to you this week. For Saquon, it ain't so. He picked up Kirk Cousins for the bye week of Breeze. Cousins goes for 51.2 after starting out the game with 3 interceptions and looking like he might have another single-digit score this week. But he was playing the Falcons defense, so he ended up with almost 350 passing yards and 3 touchdowns. But it wasn't enough, as we have, yikes, Devontae Parker only 6.5, Juju only 2.5, Edelman 6.5, James Conner, the lone bright spot, 20.2, Henderson from the Rams, 9.2, Jonnu Smith only 2.5, Tonyan at the flex here, 2 tight ends this week, 5.5 points for him. Your kicker, Elliott from the Eagles here. Is this, you usually don't use him. You had Lutz, who was on bye this week, so I'm pretty sure you usually use Lutz. And Elliott got you a -1. Looks like his only kick was a missed 50-yard field goal. So if he makes that field goal, this matchup goes the other way. Who knows what would happen with the actual game there, as Baltimore was beating Philadelphia pretty bad, but then they came back and actually almost tied it at the end of that game. The Colts defense, surprisingly here too, they were down, I believe, 21-0 very quickly to the Cincinnati Bengals. Although they did end up coming back and winning the game, they didn't really do too much, gave up a lot of yards, 2 sacks and a turnover. Yahoo says 8. But since Elliott had -1, I'm going to guess your actual score here bumped up 6. So only 14 points from the Colts defense. Not too bad. I mean, I'll take 14 points from my defense anytime. Even though that's kind of middle of the road. It's better than getting 0 or a single-digit score there, which happens quite often. Anything you can get that's above 10 from your defense, you'll usually take that. But yeah, just a lot of little things that did not go right this week for Saquon. It ain't so. Yeah. So your kicker makes a field goal somewhere in there. This might go differently. But I could go on and on, as I often always say, about all the things that could have gone differently in this matchup, but they didn't. It is what it is, as Gags and his shirt would tell me. So Ed Logger, both of these guys are now 2-4. Ed Logger moving up to 2-4. Saquon, it ain't so, moving down to 2-4. Although Saquon has the advantage yet because he is in 8th place, while Ed Logger remains in 11th place, despite the victory. All right, then we had Possum Magic going up against Disco. And Possum Magic coming kind of rolling along here these past few weeks. He gets the victory, 179.05. Disco, 154.3. Pretty even quarterback matchup here is Stafford and Brady. 32.5 for Stafford, 33.5 for Brady. Possum's wide receivers, Scary Terry, Diggs, and Tim Patrick. 14.5, 16.5, and 14 respectively. The big one here, Derrick Henry, over 200 yards rushing, 2 touchdowns, including a long touchdown bonus. He got you 48.5 points this week. Another big game from him. He had a 30-pointer a couple weeks ago, but he's getting the touchdowns there, doing well for you. Pretty consistent performer. You're not going to get 200 yards every week, but he's been rolling along, getting those touchdowns, so can't complain right now if you are Possum Magic. His other running back was Harris from the Patriots. He goes for 4.5. Hayden Hurst, your tight end, 15.7. Preston Williams in the flex there, 9.8. Bullock, your kicker from Cincinnati, he got you about 12. And then the Tennessee Titans defense. Disappointing matchup here for you. They did win the game, but they gave up a ton of yards, a ton of points. Yahoo says 2. But actually, I think they did good in terms of like the rushing and stuff. Since you got the victory, I think we might have added like 9. I think the actual score was 11. Not too bad. But yeah, I said enough. You got a 25-point victory here, 26. So enough to get you past Disco. Tom Brady go for 33.3. Chris Godwin, Brady's receiver, 9.8. As I think already mentioned, not by me, but pointed out by Disco, Tom Brady didn't really have to do much in the second half of that game. Godwin had 9.8. I think said Mike Evans had only 2. So that game was kind of out of reach as the Packers offense couldn't do anything. But I am curious to know, and I don't know, I have to maybe perhaps look into this, how much influence the one Packers cornerback had on this fantasy performance here, shutting down Godwin and Mike Evans if he was on them, because I know that there's a guy who's really good. I can't think of his name off the top of my head here, but I believe he's been shutting down wide receivers this year so far. The top wide receivers, he's been keeping them pretty quiet. I believe that was the game where Calvin Ridley had 0, so that's why it stands out in my mind a little bit, perhaps. But curious to know how much that was an effect on this game here. But again, the Buccaneers didn't have to do much because their defense kept the Packers from doing anything. Anyway, Galladay, 14.5. Claypool, 18.1. Comes back to earth a little bit there, but still gets a touchdown. Miles Sanders, 15.5 points. He had another 70-some yard rush. I believe he fumbled the ball, though, but it was picked up by a fellow Eagle in the end zone, and he got credit for the touchdown. But most of his production came again on that one carry. As I see, he had 118 rushing yards. Said 70 some of those came on one play there. And I believe he was one of the injuries this week. He's going to be out not too long, but it looks like he's going to miss a week or two. But that's not Disco's problem anymore because Disco traded him away. Jonathan Taylor, 15.5 points. Trey Burton, 2 touchdowns, 22 points. Zeke, only 12 points in the flex there. Bailey, your kicker, 1 point. And the Redskins defense, Yahoo says 10. Must have been 13 there. Not too bad. Had a turnover, a sack. The yardage was okay. But yeah, I believe the score was 13 there. So good plug and play this week for. Said Waller was on bye, so you picked up Trey Burton, the one-time high draft pick tight end of Possum Magic there. I think when he was with the Bears, right after he left the Eagles there, but yeah, fortunately it did not come back to bite Possum, as actually Possum is the one doing the biting on Disco this week, as he gets the victory. He now is moves up to 3-3. He is in 5th place, while Disco falls to 2-4 and drops down to 9th place. All right, next up we had the matchup of the week, according to the podcast, the Dub C Hooligans versus Yinzer Jags, and this one came down to the wire on Monday night. I almost wanted to say Tuesday night. But that's right now, and we didn't have as many COVID issues this week, so there were no Tuesday games here. But anyway, Yinzer Jags sneaks out the victory here, 174.6 to 167.5. So, said we're going to get into the Cowboys a little bit here. I'll run through the numbers here, and then we'll talk about that real quickly. For Yinzer Jags, Kyler Murray, he had a long touchdown bonus, so he actually goes for 42.8. Wide receivers, Thielen, Amari Cooper, and Tyler Boyd, 14.1, 20.9, and 12.9, respectively. The aforementioned Mostert got hurt here. He got you 9.5 points before going out, though. James White gets you 15.3 on 8 receptions there. The typical, pretty prototypical James White stat line there. Kittle just under 24 points. Devontae Adams 12 in the flex there. Blankenship, your kicker, excuse me, he goes for about 8.5. And then the Baltimore Ravens defense looked like they were going to destroy the Eagles, but again, they mounted a comeback at the end there. Let's see. They had 6 sacks, a turnover. Yahoo says 9, but I'm going to guess the actual score was about 15 from the Baltimore defense there. But yeah, this one was close, but not enough for Dub C Hooligans. Let's see. He had Andy Dalton go for 45.7. His receivers, Robinson, Crowder, and Anderson. I should point out, no Julio, no Ronald Jones. Instead, you had Robbie Anderson and Myles Gaskin. I don't know what to say. Why? I'm not going to say. I have nothing to say, and I kind of feel like I should say something. I want to say something, but none of it will be good. So we're just going to gloss over the fact that Dusty Hooligans would have easily won this matchup if not for his trade. But anyway, I digress. Did I say the scores? Robinson, Crowder, Anderson, 10.5, 11.5, 11.5 respectively. His running backs, Robinson and again Gaskin, 15.5, 16.5. Schultz, your tight end, 7.5. Mike Davis, 11.5. Koo, your kicker, goes for about 20 points. Another big game from him. Let's see. And then the New England Patriots defense, they lost to Denver this week at home. Pretty sure that was. But Yahoo says 14, and we bumped you up, I'm going to guess, to 17 for your defense there. So, yeah, it was enough to get past Yinzer Jags here, who, let's see, he had Kyler Murray and Amari Cooper on Monday night, while the Dub C Hooligans had Andy Dalton and Darren Dalton Schultz. So the double Daltons there. Let's see, take a quick look here at my notes. So Dub C had about a 4-point lead. Again, so Dalton and Schultz versus Murray and Cooper there. And said Murray had the long touchdown, but he only had 9 completions. Andy Dalton had 34. Unfortunately for him, 2 interceptions there, and which ended up making their quarterback scores just about the same. And I mentioned this briefly on the lineup. I don't know who all was watching that at that point in the game there, but so what happened was I was watching the scores, and let's see, Dub C was down by about 5.5, something like that. I forget exactly what the score was. So anyway, he had a chance. The Cowboys went down. They actually they were at the 10-yard line. I believe Dalton tried to throw it to Gallup for a touchdown. They pass interfered on him. It was in the end zone. So that moves the ball to, I think, the 1 or 2 yard line, maybe the 2 yard line. And same thing, another pass interference, I believe. And they put the ball, or maybe the first one was at the 2 yard line. And then somehow, whatever, they got the ball, Cowboys had the ball at the 1 yard line. So the way that it had worked out at that moment, since they were at the 1 yard line, if Andy Dalton throws a touchdown pass, that's 4 for the touchdown, 1 for the completion. And since they were you would get 1 yard for that passing yard, that's .05. And that's exactly what Dub C was down at that moment, 5.05. So if Andy Dalton throws the touchdown to Lamb or Gallup or Zeke or said not Cooper, of course, if it was to Schultz, then none of this would have been relevant anyway either. But yeah, as long as it wasn't to Amari Cooper, we could have had a tie, which would have been fun to see. I'm sure Dub C and the Injured Jags would have hated it. although Dub C, we would have had the tie, you'd been better off having that than getting the loss here. But Yinzer Jags would certainly be frustrated. But anyway, unfortunately, as much as I would have liked to see that scenario just for the fun of it and something different, it did not happen. Andy Dalton did throw the touchdown pass, but it was to Amari Cooper. So we were this close to having a tie. I think since we started doing fractional points, I believe we've only had one other time where we had a tie. I believe it was actually me and Brian in I want to say 2012, maybe 2013. I think that's the only tie that we ever had, but that was a long time ago, and I'm fairly certain it was me and Brian. But I also believe that tie actually came down to helping me in terms of making the playoffs, because that was one less loss that I had. So a tie is unfortunate, but it's not always such a bad thing. I'm just talking about it because I would have liked to see it, just to see something different happen. But anyway, so yeah, we were that close, but then Amari Cooper got the touchdown there and put Yinzer Jags over the top and away. And then I believe right after that is when Kenyon Drake had his touchdown, and then the Cowboys got the ball back, but they put on all their backups and just ran a couple rushing plays, and the game was over there. So it was interesting to watch. Came down to the end. Could have gone a couple different ways. Instead of Schultz catches the touchdown, Dub C definitely takes this one, or we could have had a tie, but it was, unfortunately for Dub C, Amari Cooper there. But yeah, so Yinzer Jags gets the 7-point victory. Yinzer Jags, he moves up to 5-1. He is right on the tail of the Isotopes in second place there. And the Dub C Hooligans, they dropped to 3-3, but they are actually in fourth place. So not a bad place to be, despite the loss here. So, all right, going down the line, we already did Gags. So the last matchup is Hillbillies on PCP versus the Mighty Midgets. Hillbillies on PCP puts up another good score, gets the victory this week. I told you, Brian, you just gotta wait for things to level out, and they are. Instead, I believe that Hillbillies on PCP, their lowest score this year is something like 175. So he's right in that 180 to 200 point range every single week, and it's only a matter of time till that comes around and evens out. So Hillbillies on PCP, I personally think they're going to make the playoffs, even though he started 0-4. The pieces are all there, and I've kind of been saying it from the beginning that things are going to have a pretty good chance of turning around for him. I'd rather not. I don't know if I want to see Hillbillies on PCP in the playoffs here, especially because I know I'm onto you, Brian. I know you're trying to make some little trades there. I know what's going on. I know you're trying to get your boy back. So we'll see if it happens or not. And if anybody who's listening, I'm sure you know who Brian's boy is that he's trying to get back here. So anyway, Hillbillies on PCP gets the victory, 189 even to 139.5 for Mighty Midgets. For Hillbillies, Roethlisberger only goes for 26.5, but Jefferson, the receiver from Minnesota, was the recipient of much of Kirk Cousins' garbage time comeback effort in that game. Over 160 yards, 9 catches, 2 touchdowns, 42.5 points for him. Judy, the Denver receiver, goes for 5.2. Slayton, 11.8. Running backs you had to start this week because of some bye week and injury problems, I think. Bye week issues. And Le'Veon didn't play. No Jacobs or Cook. He was hurt. And now he's on bye. So Adrian Peterson and McKissick from the the Washington football team. Peterson, 12.8. He scored a touchdown. And McKissick goes for 14.5. Hawkinson, your tight end, scores a touchdown on 2 catches. 9.5 points for him. Fulgham, the phenom wide receiver so far this year for Philadelphia, who you spent all your fab on. He got you 19.5 points this week. Not too bad production there. I don't know if it's worth as much money as you paid for it, considering you're going to have some receivers coming back from bye weeks, and who knows how long Fulgham will actually have a place in your starting lineup here, especially with Keenan, Metcalf, and Jefferson here. So you'll have Le'Veon, Dalvin, and Jacobs here. So yeah, there might not be room for him to be starting this week, but he got you helped get you a victory this week. Even though he wasn't the most important piece to getting that, Mighty Midgets wasn't able to make this one competitive. So, but it's still got those points. Who knows where it'll come down to at the end of the year in terms of making the playoffs and getting in the standings there, seeding and stuff like that. Every point you can get is worth it. So, yeah. The point is, the money that you spent, you insured yourself a victory. So in the long run, at least in the short term, in the long run, maybe not worth it as much, but every victory counts and is important here as we all fight to get to 7 one way or the other here. So, all right, Zerline, he goes for, 3, maybe 3.5. And then the Steelers defense, Yahoo says 22, but you're bumped up quite a bit there, almost 20 points there. So it must have been about 40, I'm going to guess, for the Pittsburgh Steelers defense. They scored a touchdown, a couple turnovers there. Big game from them, shutting down the Cleveland Browns. For Mighty Midgets, not enough this week, only 140 points there, 139. He has Patrick Mahomes go for 44 points. His receivers, Lamb, Cobb, and Hardman. CeeDee Lamb, 13.5. Cobb, 10.5. And Hardman, 0. Kind of surprising there. Thought he would get some looks, especially since it's Sammy Watkins being out for a few weeks. Yeah, it was I think the weather was a big factor in this matchup, and it was the Edwards-Alaire show, as they did, I want to say it was one of the highest rushing attempts and rushing yards games that Andy Reid has ever had. I don't know if maybe not not in his career, but probably with the Chiefs there. Yeah, they ran the ball all day long and effectively. So in that weather too, no reason to be throwing the ball all over the place. I'm sure there will be bigger and better things to come. I was going to say that for Patrick Mahomes, for Mighty Midgets, for Patrick Mahomes, but Mighty Midgets already earlier today traded Patrick Mahomes. He's gone. He is now on disco, which grinds my gears a little bit. Not as much as if you traded him to Detling, but Detling doesn't need him. So anyway, Patrick Mahomes is no longer on your team. So any brighter days up ahead for Patrick Mahomes will not be to the benefit of the Mighty Midgets. Your running backs, Mixon and Gibson, 15, 9.5. Ertz, 7.5. Madison, perhaps the biggest surprise here in this matchup. He only got you 4 points playing in replacing Dalvin Cook, who was out with injury this week. So, of course, you're playing the owner of Dalvin Cook, Hillbillies on PCP. But really, unfortunately for you Mighty Midgets, blame Kirk Cousins, because he is the one who game scripted Madison out of this by throwing 3 interceptions early in the game and getting the Vikings way behind, and said Madison was really not a factor. And Jefferson was the huge factor. So, said going for 42.5 points. If you let's say Jefferson gets about 20, which is a decent, pretty good wide receiver score. Not 42 is a great wide receiver score. So let's say we chop about 22 points off of Hillbillies on PCP, that takes him down to 167. You had 140-ish. So let's say Madison, he gets you maybe he gets you like 2 touchdowns, has a normal Dalvin Cook day. You really just needed him to get about 30 points, which is definitely in the range of ability for Dalvin Cook there. So yeah, the 0 from Hardman there, and Mahomes not having to do too much definitely was probably the biggest factor in this matchup. But Jefferson said the way that game just played out went in favor, going heavily in favor of Jefferson, and just I think we all expected Madison to do Dalvin Cook things, but again, Kirk Cousins said no. Unfortunately for Mighty Midgets this week. And that might be the only week, your only opportunity to use Madison this year, because this week coming up, I believe the Vikings are on bye, and Dalvin Cook should be back and good to go. So everything lined up nicely that you were able to use Madison. The 1 week that Cook is out, you're playing Brian, so it all worked out. Everything kind of came together nicely, and then it fell apart. So, like a house of cards, I guess. Robbie Gold goes for about 7.5, and then finishing up here, the Chicago Bears defense gets you about, looks like you bumped up almost 10. Yahoo says 19, so I'm going to guess 9, extra 9, so about 28 from the Chicago Bears defense. Pretty good score, defensive score there. But yeah, Hillbillies on PCP. He moves up to 2 and 4. He's in 7th place, right outside the playoff picture there. Well, unfortunately, the Mighty Midgets, they dropped to 1 and 5, and they dropped down to 12th place currently. So, unfortunate turn of events here for the Mighty Midgets. Although his lineup, I believe next week is going to look a whole lot different than it did this week after the extends all the players that he acquired from Disco there in the trade that I'm sure they will get into in the podcast, so I don't need to do it. But again, Patrick Mahomes no longer a Mighty Midget. He is now on Disco's team here. So, all right, I think that is every matchup. So again, just a quick reminder that the Darkwing Jet, he was the one eliminated from the knockout pool this week. Let's see if I have it written down. That means teams who are still alive in the knockout pool are Springfield Isotopes, Possum Magic still alive, Yinzer Jags, that's 3, Dub C, that's 4, Gags is 5, and Hillbillies is 6. Right? Yeah. Topes, Jags, Gags, Dub C, Possum, and Hillbillies. Pretty much everybody in the top of the standings here are still alive in the knockout pool here. So, all right, let's take a quick look ahead at Week 7, the matchups we've got. I believe Gags already pointed out real quick on the lineup there that we have the top 4 teams in terms of standings right now are playing each other this week, as we have the Isotopes going up against Dub C, and Yinzer Jags going up against Gags to Riches. Dub C will be looking to give the Isotopes their first loss, while Yinzer Jags and Gags to Riches, one of you will get win number 6, and one of you will drop to 5 and 2. But you'll still, no matter what happens, you'll still be at least a game ahead of everybody else, because as the standings currently sit, Yinzer Jags and Gags to Riches, they are 2 games ahead of the next couple people who are all 3 and 3. So we've got 2-game advantage there, about halfway through the season here. 3 3 and 3s. Let's see, we got 5 2 and 4s, and one 1-5 there. So here we are. So we are going into week 7, and suffice to say, we're not quite there yet, but most likely, I don't want to get ahead of myself, but the Isotopes, Yinzer Jags, and Gags to Riches can pretty confidently say that they're going to take at least they're going to take 3 of the playoff spots here. So that means 3. If 3 are taken, we got 3 spots available, and pretty much everybody else, 9 people, are going to be fighting. As of right now, 9 teams fighting for those 3 spots. Mighty Midgets, you're not out of it yet. You need some things to turn around real quickly. If you fall to 1-6, you're going to have some serious problems here. I believe you're favored to lose against Possum Magic this week coming up, but we'll see what happens. So again, 4th place is 3-3. You're only 2 games out behind that. So if the Mighty Midgets, you need to start winning. You need to do it real soon. You can't afford a couple more losses here, or no matter how hard you try, you might be done. But again, 11th place is only 1 game behind 4th place. So, of course, depends how matchups go and things like that going down the line here the rest of the season. But it's going to be, as always, an interesting playoff race. We'll see how things shape out as we go along here. But this week should be fun as we have the top 4 teams all going up against each other. I know, just from my personal experience so far this season, kind of lucking out to be 6-0, I would say, because all of the Isotopes matchups so far this year have been from against teams who are at the bottom end of the standings. We defeated Mighty Midgets, Ed Logger, Disco, Hillbillies, Darkwing Jets, Possum Magic. Even though Possum and Darkwing, Possum's been moving up, Darkwing's been doing pretty well. But so the real tests, I believe, coming up for the Isotopes is just to see how good we really are. No offense to anybody else's teams there, of course. Who knows what happens? Everything from week to week. But the way the season is shaping out, the teams that are pulling away from the pack here are Isotopes, Yinzer Jags, and Gags to Riches. So I believe I said I played Dub C here this week. Next week, I'm pretty sure I get Gags to Riches, and then Yinzer Jags is in week 10. Unfortunately, my 2 roughest bye weeks, my weeks with bye week problems, are weeks 8 and week 10. So, while it's nice to be 6-0, I'm expecting to get a couple defeats here in the next few weeks here. So, you guys will be lucking out, trying to catch up in the standings here. So I fully expect to get some losses, and who knows, remaining in first place through the rest of the season. As much as I would like to do it, don't know. I'm not confident, too confident, always cautiously optimistic, but emphasis on the cautionary there. So we will see what happens here going forward. Because personally, I don't care where I finish in the standings at the end of the season. The regular season championship it means nothing to me other than getting your money back. As nice as that is, nobody cares who wins the regular season championship. All that matters to me is making the playoffs and getting a chance to take back the Tonto Bowl trophy this year. So, hopefully, I was talking to Josh a little bit about this. Hopefully, maybe he'll get into a little bit with one. And I really hope that the Inside the Computer segment comes back after a couple weeks of hiatus. You'll pull us in and then you took it away, and now we're craving it. So hopefully Josh brings it back. We were talking a little bit about playoff seedings and which seeds tend to win the most often. Maybe it would be nice to hear him get into a little bit of an analysis on what the ideal playoff seed is. Whether you want to be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, or 6, in terms of how things have played out over the last 10 years or so, in terms of the league here. So, spoiler alert: being 1 and 2 isn't, or 1 or 2 isn't everything it's cracked up to be, because one of those two teams always goes out in the first round here. Actually, where are my notes here? I have somewhere I wrote it all down and was talking to Josh about it here. So more often, well, pretty much every year, someone who is the 1 or 2 seed, excuse me, goes to the Tonto Bowl more often than not. But in the last 10 years, we've only had one time, I believe, only once have we had the number 1 and number 2 seeds meet in the Tonto Bowl, and that was actually all the way back in 2011. So it's as nice as it is to get a bye week and make one of those tough spots there. It does not always lead to victory here. So it's just an interesting thought to me. Maybe he'll get into it a little bit. I know he's got several things that topics that he means to discuss. I'm kind of surprised that he didn't have one last week, because I have been talking to him a little bit before and actually kind of accidentally guessed what one of his topics was going to be about. So hopefully he brings it back, and I'll be looking forward to it there. So I think that's pretty much about it. Hopefully we enjoyed the song at the beginning there real quick. Going to Kansas City in reference to Le'Veon Bell, and might as well, I'm talking about a little bit of little mention of Patrick Mahomes. Still here, still in my heart, always will be. Patrick Mahomes there and Kansas City there. So it's going to be interesting to see. So I already said I think Hillbillies on PCP are a playoff team, but we will see how that Le'Veon Bell situation in Kansas City plays out. I think he's not going to be as crazy good as he'll have some big games probably, but I don't think that he's going to be a huge difference maker. That's just my guess. Patrick Mahomes isn't really a huge screen pass, dump it off to the running backs. That's not really, he doesn't do that a whole lot, which just kind of seems like a surprise for an Andy Reid offense there, but not surprised too by this past week's results there, just because I really thought once they announced that they were signing Le'Veon Bell, the game actually played out a lot like I thought that it would, just because once they announced that, I fully expected that. My immediate first thought was, wow, they are probably going to make this a Clyde Edwards-Helaire feature game, because how do you think he feels right now? You're bringing in Le'Veon Bell. Clyde's a rookie, and you're bringing in this veteran superstar player. But you got to make sure that you're not breaking the confidence of Edwards-Helaire. So I really kind of expected that they were going to feature him and make him show him that we want you, we appreciate you around, we're not replacing you, or things like that. We're not going to do that. And I'm sure the weather had something to do with it, but I know at the time, not to toot my own horn or anything, but I really thought they're probably going to, because the Fantasy Life app was looking at there, and people were freaking out on the message boards there, talking about Edwards-Helaire, what are you going to do with him now that Le'Veon's, but that was my first thought, that week 6 was going to be a game where they feature him, and actually ended up doing that. So, which was good, because again, like I said, you don't want to ruin his confidence going forward there. So, I mean, he's good. They don't need Le'Veon. It's a luxury to be getting him because he wants to win a Super Bowl. Because he doesn't care about the money this year because the Jets are going to be paying him most of what he was owed anyway. So he's this year, it's Super Bowl or bust for Le'Veon Bell. And who knows? Le'Veon's kind of a dick. It could completely go sideways for him if he's not happy with his role, whatever it ends up being there. So, yeah, he might cause a scene, and they might end up getting rid of him. Who knows how that's going to exactly play out there. So, another factor for the course of a plot line, I guess I should say, for the rest of the season there. An interesting one to see how things play out. So, all right, everybody. That's enough review and my talking here. Week 6 in the books. So lots of good matchups. I talked about the top 4 real quick. But all the other matchups, we got Saquon versus Shawshank. 2-4 teams trying to get heading in the right direction there. One of you will get lost number 5. Hillbillies versus Darkwing Jet. Said Hillbillies on the rise. Darkwing Jet kind of sliding right now. Darkwing trying to turn it around. And Hillbillies trying to keep on his ascension there. Back to chasing 500 there. So that should be a good matchup. So Darkwing's been on a bit of a slide, so he needs to bounce back and to get a victory here while he's waiting for McCaffrey to come back. Another matchup of 2 and 4 is Disco versus Ed Logger. And then we have Mighty Midgets versus Possum Magic there. So a lot of good matchups this week in terms of standings movement, playoffs implications here, as a lot of you guys who are muddled in the middle there look to either rise up or fall down. You're not looking to fall down. You're trying to not to fall down. So, but some of you will. That's just the way every year goes. So, yeah, it'll be interesting as always. And again, as always too, I will say good luck to everyone this week. Hopefully, we have no significant injuries. May all of your players meet or exceed expectations. And we have a lot of good matchups. And we have it'll be exciting. We have an exciting week. No big COVID problems. No big injuries. And we are back here next week reviewing the fun events of week number 7. So, all right, guys. Thanks for listening or watching or whatever it is you do. And we'll see you back here again next week. Thanks, guys. Bye-bye.